Foreign ownership to foreign jobs. The next question is from Matthew Lawrence. Go ahead.
Yeah, good evening. I'm an unemployed Australian merchant seafarer. Why would any government in their right mind replace tax-paying Australian seafarers with exploited foreign seafarers working on 457 visas, working for as low as $2 an hour?
Good question.
Alan Jones, will start you off on that.
Well, it's obvious. I mean, there's no answer to your question. Absolutely ludicrous. Absolutely ridiculous. I mean, we're talking earlier on about gender equality. What about employment equality? Where is someone actually supporting Australian jobs? We pretend we're about it, and at the first snap that we get a chance, the opposite happens. The man's got an unanswerable question.
So you're essentially backing the MUA's campaign?
Look, I don't care whose the campaign is. If someone's right, you back. If I think someone's right, I back them. I don't care whether they're unionists or what they are. And I think in this instance, that bloke's supporting Australian jobs and the capacity to take home a pay packet for his wife and kids, and he's being gazumped by someone who comes in more cheaply. I mean, the thing is happening all the time, in a sense. The free trade agreements are fine, you know, but how does an Australian company compete when it's rightly paying good wages so that people can have a dignity and a decent start of life in this country, and yet competing with countries who are importing stuff into Australia where they're paying their workers nothing?
Michaela Cash.
Thank you very much for the question. Just to be sort of sure here, everything that you were referring to is currently happening under the legislation that the Labor Party brought in 2012.
But the licences
that have been granted are allowed to be granted under Labor's legislation. The coalition government has made no changes to the coastal shipping laws. So everything you're referring to is happening
would you like to? Do you think you
yes,
should?
Yes, we would, absolutely, because we believe that shipping needs to be competitive. Can I just give you some statistics?
Sorry, do you, just to pick up Alan Jones's point and our questioners, do you think it should be Australian seamen on these vessels?
I think that we need to ensure that we are internationally competitive, because if we are not, you will see far more jobs lost in Australia. Coastal shipping in Australia is on the decline, and it's on the decline because of the legislation that the Labor Party brought in. The number of vessels has gone from 30 down to 15. I'd be worried about that as well. But everything that is occurring under the 2012 legislation.
Okay, just
I want to see coastal shipping in Australia competitive.
Michaela, just pause you for a second. Now, I'll come back to you because we don't want people yelling out, but you can quickly respond to that. Go ahead.
Thank you. You know, how can we compete with $2 an hour? It's impossible. What can you pay a mortgage, your child's education, hospitals on $2 an hour? Can you compete with $2? And just, you know, the 457 visa, that was supposed to be brought in to pull up a slack in a shortage of labour, not to replace Australian workers. It was here to replace a skilled shortage. So if there was no workers available in Australia, yeah, sure. But as long as they're paid Australian rates and conditions, not to be brought in on...
457 workers, they have to be paid Australian rates and conditions. And in fact, they're actually, by law, they have to be paid above that.
Some are not even being paid.
457 workers account for less than 1% of Australia's workforce. Under the coalition government, the number of 457 people coming to Australia has declined from that under Labor, where it effectively doubled when Labor was in office.
I'm just going to, because you did mention the Labor Party before, in fact, blame them for the situation, so if anyone...
It's your legislation. It's your legislation.
Let's be clear. What is happening, you know, on the MV Portland, what is happening in terms of coastal shipping under this government is a deliberate government policy. It is a deliberate decision to not prioritise Australian jobs, but to enable foreign workers on foreign crewed vessels to operate domestic routes. Now, our view is, and Michaela says, oh, it's your act. The truth behind that, everyone, is that they couldn't get the numbers in the Senate to change the legislation, so they've done it via the back door, via licences that they're issuing.
The licences
so let's be really clear. Well, it is a change of policy which were never issued under us. So let's be clear. Now, our view is we should think about domestic shipping in the way we think about the Hume Highway or our railway drivers. You know, you have to have an Australian licence, they're crewed by Australian workers on Australian wages and conditions. Why we would allow a situation where we have people, foreign crews, when Australians are available, who are not required to observe the same conditions that Australian seafarers are employed under, why we would voluntarily say we have to have them in the system because we have to be internationally competitive when the US doesn't do it and a number of other
this bloke a job tomorrow? This is the issue.
Countries don't do it.
Who gets this bloke a job tomorrow? This bloke's been run out of town by cheap labour. That's the issue. I mean, we can talk till the cows come home.